Here is section 1, 500 words, of the short story. A true dark love, infidelity story of a stepsister. Section 1. The silent arrival. I still remember the first time Alina walked into our home. Quiet, slow steps echoing on the wooden floor like a whisper from the past. She didn't say much, and when she did, her words felt like carefully folded paper. Delicate, distant, hard to unfold. My father had married her mother 6 months earlier. Both freshly divorced and looking for some sort of peace, I guess. I was 19. She was 18. We weren't blood, but we were suddenly family. She wore black on most days. Not the kind of black that screams rebellion, but the kind that absorbs emotion. Calm, deep, quiet. Her eyes didn't avoid people, but they never invited anyone in either. She moved like someone who had learned to tiptoe through life, always bracing for the next storm. The house wasn't small, but it felt colder after she arrived. Maybe it was just me. Or maybe it was the way she filled the empty spaces with silence instead of noise. Her bedroom was right across the hall from mine. Every night, I could hear faint piano music coming from her room. Not the cheerful kind. More like something someone played when they were trying not to cry. She wasn't unfriendly. Just guarded. She made her own tea in the morning and always rinsed her cup twice before drying it. She'd sit in the corner of the living room with a book, legs folded under her, reading in a light that barely touched her skin. My father worked late most days, and her mom, my stepmother, traveled often for her job. That left us alone, more than two strangers should have been. Started small. A smile at the dinner table. Comment about the weather. One evening I caught her watching a movie in the living room. I sat beside her without asking. She didn't tell me to leave. We didn't talk, but she handed me the popcorn bowl halfway through. That was our first conversation, without words. Days passed. Then weeks. Slowly, I started to notice her differently. The way her lips curled slightly when she read something she liked. The way her hair always seemed to fall on the left side of her face when she was tired. The tiny scar on her wrist she covered with bracelets. I didn't know what I was feeling. It wasn't love. Not yet. But it wasn't just curiosity either. It was something darker, something slow burning and confusing, a kind of emotional gravity pulling me toward her. And every time our eyes met in the hallway, I wondered if she felt it too. Back then, I told myself we were just step-siblings, strangers under one roof, nothing more. But somewhere deep inside, I knew this story wouldn't end like others. Something was coming. Something quiet. Something dangerous. And it had already begun. Would you like me to continue with section 2 now? Here is section 2, 500 words, of the short story. A true dark love, infidelity story of a stepsister. Section 2. Lines that shouldn't blur. Time made it worse, or maybe it just made everything clearer. The more I got to know Alina, the harder it became to pretend we were just family. We began talking more. Not often, not loudly, but with meaning. Late at night, when everyone was asleep, we'd find ourselves in the kitchen or on the back porch, sharing silence and stories that didn't belong in daylight. One night, I found her sitting on the stairs, head down, quietly humming to herself. I asked her if she was okay. She didn't answer immediately. Then she whispered, "Do you believe some people aren't meant to be loved?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to say everyone deserves love. But her voice made me hesitate. It wasn't a question, it was a confession. She told me about her past. Not everything, just glimpses. How her mom had moved her from place to place. How she stopped expecting consistency. How love had become a word she didn't trust. I listened. That's all I could do. There was something heartbreaking in how calmly she spoke, like she had repeated those stories to herself too many times already. From then on, things changed between us. We weren't flirting, not in the usual sense. There were no cheesy lines or obvious intentions. But there was something unspoken. The way she lingered when I handed her a mug. The way her laughter, rare as it was, felt like a secret meant only for me. It wasn't loud. It was low and warm, like a match struck in the dark. I started lying to my girlfriend. Just small things. Telling her I was asleep when I was talking to Alina outside, or that I had an early class when I stayed up late listening to her stories. The guilt was there, I won't deny it. But it was quieter than the pull I felt toward my stepsister. There was one night I still remember vividly. A storm had knocked the power out. The house was dark except for the occasional flash of lightning outside. I walked into the living room to find her sitting on the floor, candles flickering around her. She smiled and said, "Looks like we've traveled back in time." I laughed and sat beside her. We didn't talk much. Just sat there, her head eventually resting lightly against my shoulder. Felt right and terrifying. After a while, I reached out and held her hand. She didn't pull away. We fell asleep like that. Two silhouettes tangled in quiet trust. Nothing happened that night. Not physically. But in our hearts, something had shifted. I didn't know what it meant or where it would lead. I just knew that we had crossed a line. And from that moment on, it couldn't be undone. Ready for Section 3. Here is Section 3, 500 words, of the short story. A true dark love, infidelity story of a stepsister. Section 3. The line was crossed. It happened on a night I wasn't proud of, the kind that starts with a fight and ends in silence. My girlfriend and I had argued again. She said I was distant, that I wasn't present anymore. I didn't have the courage to admit she was right. Instead, I hung up mid-call, threw on a hoodie, and walked home in the rain, drenched in frustration and guilt. The house was dark when I got in. Everyone asleep, or so I thought. But the soft glow from under the living room door said otherwise. I pushed it open and found Alina curled up on the couch, a book half closed in her lap. She looked up surprised, then said, "Rough night." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. She got up without a word, walked into the kitchen, and came back with 2 mugs of tea. She sat next to me, close but not too close. Just close enough for me to feel her presence like heat on skin. The silence was heavier than before, but neither of us tried to break it. And then she spoke. "Sometimes," she said quietly, "I think some people come into our lives to test how much wrong we're willing to do for something that feels right." I looked at her. She didn't look away. There was a storm inside me, not of lust but of longing, confusion, pain. I should have stood up. I should have walked away. But instead I leaned in. The first kiss wasn't desperate. It was slow, fragile, like 2 people standing on a frozen lake, afraid of falling through. But once it happened, everything else fell with it. Touch became instinct. Her breath, her skin, her silence. All of it swallowed me whole. There was no one else in the world in that moment. No girlfriend. No rules. No guilt. Just her. And then, morning. I woke before she did. She was sleeping, her face soft in the early light, a slight smile still on her lips. For a second I wanted to believe it was a dream. But her bracelet lay on the floor. Her tea sat unfinished on the table. And the echo of her voice from last night, "Something that feels right," still rang in my head. I sat there, heart racing, stomach hollow. The world outside had moved on like nothing happened. Birds chirp. Light filtered through the curtains. But inside me, kiss. I knew I'd crossed a line that couldn't be redrawn. I told myself it was a mistake. That we were just broken people reaching for warmth in the dark. That it didn't mean anything. But that was a lie I didn't even believe. It wasn't just a moment. It was a turning point. And I knew then, the cost of that night would echo for the rest of my life. Would you like to continue with Section 4? Here is Section 4, 500 words, of the short story. A true dark love, infidelity story of a stepsister. Section 4. What remains after fire? I didn't tell anyone at first. Not my girlfriend. Not my friends. Not even Alina. The days after felt unreal, like I was walking through fog. She avoided me, and I didn't blame her. We still passed each other in the hallway, still shared the same kitchen, but something had shattered between us. And in the silence, the pieces cut deeper. Then one evening my girlfriend came over unexpectedly. She sensed something was off. My eyes gave too much away. When she asked what was wrong, I couldn't lie anymore. I told her everything. She didn't scream. She didn't even cry at first. She just stood there, still, cold, broken, and whispered, "With your stepsister?" That word hit harder when she said it aloud. Stepsister. It sounded wrong even though we shared no blood. Sounded like betrayal. 'Cause it was. She left, slamming the door behind her, taking whatever innocence I had left with her. For weeks things unraveled. My father started looking at me differently. Distant, disappointed. I never told him directly, but maybe Alina did. Or maybe the change in the air was too strong to ignore. My stepmother grew colder too. No one said anything, but the house felt like it was grieving, not for a death, but for a loss we couldn't name. Then one morning she was gone. Her room was empty. Her bookshelf cleared. Her bed made. No note. No goodbye. It was only when I opened my own door that I saw it. A single page from her journal, folded and slipped under the frame. On it she had written, "We were never meant to last. You were my moment of warmth in a world that had always been cold. But some fires aren't meant to burn forever. They destroy the walls we build, and then they leave us staring at the ashes. Take care of your heart, even if mine couldn't." I read it twice, then 3 times, and cried not because she left but because I knew she was right. Years have passed since then. I never saw her again. Never heard from her. Sometimes I wonder where she is. Whether she found peace or love, or just somewhere quiet to exist without being haunted. I tried dating again, but nothing ever felt real. Maybe I was punishing myself. Or maybe part of me still lives in that cold house, sitting beside a girl with a broken smile and a heart full of shadows. This wasn't a love story. This was a fire. A brief, dangerous, beautiful flame that lit up 2 damaged people for a moment, and then consumed everything in its path. Some stories don't have heroes. Some don't have endings. Only echoes. And mine still whispers her name in the quietest hours. Let me know if you'd like a YouTube script version voiceover narration style, or thumbnail prompt for this story.